I'm Roby Brock. Welcome to this edition of Talk Business and Politics. On this week's agenda, one-on-one with Governor Asa Hutchinson. He's unveiled his budget for the next fiscal year. Where are his priorities? Is there room for compromise on his tax cut plan? And what does he see as doable on a highway program? Finally, is Arkansas Works working? We'll spend the half hour in a conversation with the governor.
This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Welcome to the program. More than a week after the midterm elections, Arkansas politicians have snapped into action. The legislature has begun its pre-filing process. Earlier in the week, Governor Asa Hutchinson expressed his support for an extension of a half-cent sales tax for roads that will expire in 2023. But is that enough to move forward on current highway needs? The state reported another 3,800 Arkansas Works recipients have been removed from the rolls for failure to comply with the new work requirement and for other reasons. Is this policy achieving its goal? The governor put forward his $5.75 billion budget proposal for the next fiscal year. It will be a big item on the legislative agenda as it includes tax cuts and a reorganization of state government agencies. Where is the governor willing to bend? And lastly, the legislature put a hold on the Supreme Court state budget, a move made, as some would suggest, to find out more about a fund supported by attorneys' fees. Some suggest it was put on hold for retribution for the court, striking down issue 1, the legislative referred tort reform proposal. Is this a dangerous precedent? All of these political stories are on the docket as I sit down with Governor Asa Hutchinson after this word from our sponsors.
You'll find us at the end of a lot of long country roads, covering over 60% of the great state of Arkansas. Our 17 electric distribution cooperatives are working day and night to provide reliable, affordable power to over 500,000 homes, farms, and businesses, just like yours. The Electric Cooperatives of Arkansas, your local energy partners.
A farmer understands the needs of every season, and so do Farm Bureau members. When Arkansas families needed electricity, our members brought it. Reliable roads, our members built them. Agricultural education, our members provided. Today's members may not live on a farm, but their connections are as close as ever. So when that difficult season comes, no member has to face it alone. For every season, Arkansas Farm Bureau. Join today.
When did too big to fail replace too smart to fail? When did trend overtake truth? When did putting clients first stop being second nature? For us, never.
You can't take a risk in any investment that if it goes wrong and you lose it all, that you endanger the ability of the firm to survive. And that's really what Wall Street forgot.
So when do you want to learn more about Stephens, one of the country's most successful investment banking firms?
You're born amazing, even if the pregnancy doesn't go as planned. When the Markham family's son was born nearly 4 months premature, the doctors and nurses at Baptist Health were there with the care he needed to survive. And together, they're helping to turn one of life's little miracles into a lifetime of happiness. Keep on thriving, keep on going, and keep on amazing. For amazing care before, during, and after childbirth, visit baptist-health.com.
Welcome back to the program. I'm Roby Brock, joined by Governor Asa Hutchinson. Always good to have you with us. He's fresh off of his re-election victory, a little over 65%. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Welcome to a second term of us abusing you up at the state capitol for off and on.
No abuse. Let me tell you, it was really gratifying to see the voters of Arkansas give me that huge margin. It gives me confidence. It gives me ratification, I think, for the 4 agenda items that I really ran on during the campaign. So very excited about the next 4 years and the opportunity to serve the people of Arkansas.
Let's hit some of your agenda items. You rolled out your $5.75 billion budget this past week. It includes state government reorganization as well as tax cuts. I don't think I have to tell you, you've learned enough in 2 sessions to know that governors don't always get everything they want in those budgets that they present. Are you going to get all of this tax cut that you want?
I believe we will. Actually, that's reflects the conservative leadership that's in the government now. The debate is not whether you're going to have tax cuts, but how much and how fast can you do those. And we want to be careful. I think we see that in the past 4 years when we've had some major tax cuts, $100 million, then $50 million that'll actually go into effect next January. And so we've been cautious about it and careful, but very determined to get to that lower rate of individual income tax so that we can be competitive. And so there's a focus and tension on that. So I believe that with the work of the legislative task force that's been working for the last 2 years, they've done an amazing job of educating the other members, getting information out as to what we can do. And so I think there's a good consensus built around that plan of tax cuts that we've outlined in the budget.
You want to do some reorganization of state government. You want to shrink those agency heads. It's not going to spend or save a ton of money. It's going to basically just consolidate reporting to you in many ways. Do you anticipate, because we have seen some attempts at some reorg before, particularly in the agriculture department, do you feel like there's consensus for that right now, or from what you floated out there, or do you feel like there's going to be some pushback in some areas?
Actually, because we've worked hard on this with the advisory group on transformation, we brought the private sector but also legislators in. We've been working on this for a couple of years, and so with that foundation, it's built to help build a consensus, and so I think there's a lot of momentum for it. Now, we get information, we continue to listen, or do we have this block in the right spot? Is this better aligned over here? So we're always listening to that, but I think we have it very, very close. The challenge is drafting some very complicated pieces of legislation. Yep. And this is not easy, and so there's going to be large volumes that we're going to have to pour through and get right. But I think there's a consensus we need to do this. I do learn from history, and anytime I enter into a major project like transformation, I first look back at the transformation efforts of the past. For example, the Department of Public Safety that we're going to create. I'm mindful that this was created in the last government reorganization under Dale Bumpers, and we had a number of different directors of public safety, and it was dismantled under Clinton, and Tommy Robinson was one of the last directors of public safety. Why did that not work then? And I think,
why do you think it didn't work?
Well, I think one of the reasons is you probably did not have the right agencies that were a part of that public safety, and you did not make it integrated. It never does any good to have just a layer over the top with all the silos underneath. You've actually got to integrate all of the agencies together into something that works well, and that's about the leadership team and the long-term commitment. We're doing some things that are very, very unique in our transformation with the Department of Transformation and Shared Services that will help guide this and administer all the shared services just like they do in the private sector to the different departments. For the first time, we'll have a new Inspector General that will help us to identify waste and help shepherd these efficiency initiatives as well. And so we've learned from the past. I think this is something that will last, and we're working very hard to get it right.
You're going to be amenable to some change, though. If somebody can make a good argument to you that you should do something differently, or this isn't the right way to align something, or once it is realigned under this new structure, if it's not working, you're willing to change on that.
Well, of course. We're always listening to something that's done that can do it better, but we have listened for a long time, and so this is a good process that we're in. But for example, there's we want to make sure we get some of the sub-agencies, and that's not going to change what we're largely doing with the 15 different departments of government. So it's a good plan. I expect it to pass, but we will always be listening and making sure we're trying to get it right. And I do hope that the new cabinet officials, as you implement this, will have some flexibility, because they're going to identify some things that will need to continue to be changed.
Some critics further to the right suggest that it doesn't go far enough to shrink state government. You've got growth in the state budget, I think about 2.3% in terms of your increase in your numbers. Year over year, close to that number. You're reorganizing, but you're not necessarily getting rid of employees. You're going to let attrition do a lot of that. Is that fair criticism?
No, it's not fair criticism, because you've got to look at what we've done. just in the small picture of our efficiency efforts over the last couple of years, we have always underestimated the savings. The savings have been more than what we'd anticipate, but it's hard to identify it. Whenever I put someone as a Secretary of Commerce and bring these agencies together, or the Department of Labor and Licensing, they will identify efficiencies as time goes on, but it's hard to identify all of those on day one. And so you can estimate it, but it's a long-term project of saving this money. Back to the budget itself, whenever you look, we're reducing taxes, but we continue to grow our economy. That's what's great. We just had new employment numbers, as you know, came out, that 3.5% unemployment again.
Some new GDP numbers this past week, too, that I would contend there's a lot packed into the second quarter of this, to some people trying to beat some of the tariffs in terms of manufacturers and agricultural producers.
Well, sure, but the fact is we're ranked 10th in the nation. They're trying to beat them everywhere. The tariffs impact everyone, but we are ranked in the top 10 of the nation in terms of GDP growth for the second quarter of this year. I balance it out knowing that we had low numbers the first quarter, so I don't get bent out of shape about it, but or over gloating about it, but we're growing that economy, and because of that, sure, we have new revenues coming in. And then, are we doing the right thing by allocating an increase in teachers' pay? Absolutely, and that's $60 million. Are we doing the right thing by giving us 24 additional state troopers over the next 2 years when they've been depleted over the last 10 years? Absolutely, that's the right thing.
What would you have done? There's about a $40 million per year hole, at least initially, from the casinos and the lowering of the tax that's going to be there. What would you have done with that $40 million?
It would have been part of our cushion, and so it was actually right at 38, so you're right, 40 million. And so that was planned to go into our long-term savings account, restricted reserves, so it was a cushion. And so whenever we lost that, that gives us less ability to accelerate the tax cuts. We can still do the tax cuts, but not as quick. And we're able to set aside as much as we would like in the restricted reserve fund.
One more budget question for you before we take a commercial break here. There was some back and forth between the judicial branch and the legislative branch this past week. You had the Supreme Court budget was basically held up by legislators who some had some questions about the way some money was being spent in an $11 million fund. Others went on the record as saying basically this is near retribution for them making some decisions that they didn't find favorable. Is that a good way? Is that good policy?
Well, I mean, you should not be utilizing the budget as a tool of retribution for an independent judiciary, particularly if it's because you don't like some decision that they made. But whenever you look at the normal budget process, of course, the judiciary does answer to the legislature on the budget, and so the fact that they're holding this up, going to take a closer look at it, that's routine. Yep. That happens to all of our agencies regularly.
Have you said anything to anyone about that, though? Are you going to wade in on that, or are you going to leave that solely in the legislative realm? It doesn't, I mean, because it could affect the executive branch at some point in time if there's not some sort of principled stand on that.
Well, I don't see a need because I know that process. They will hold it up now. Now, if they're going to not fund the judiciary, absolutely, I'll say something about it. But what they're saying is we want to have a closer look at it to understand these areas of expenditures that are happening. That's the appropriate role of the legislature. But obviously, they need to be funded, and they will be funded.
All right, let's take a quick commercial break. I want to come back and still talk highways and Arkansas Works with you. Stick around.
Very well.
All right, you stick around too. We will be right back right after this word from our sponsors.
The original capital of authentic Arkansas has seen the most important events in our state's history. Some say the walls here do actually talk. Come hear everything they have to tell. Visit us at oldstatehouse.com.
Each day, the promise of our nation begins again. Arkansas and America, moving forward. I help make that promise a reality. It's not for everyone, but people everywhere depend on us.
Oh, I love you too, sweetie.
Trucking delivers, or everything stops. And that's what drives me.
I did.
Circuits deliver power by making connections. At Entergy, we believe that works for people, too. The next generation is our connection to the future. So every year, Entergy invests millions of dollars in education to teach skills for better jobs, to build a brighter path. To us, making connections means more than electricity. It means fulfilling promise. And together, we power life. Entergy.
Agriculture is our state's largest industry, contributing over $21 billion to our economy each year. Our diverse agricultural production ranges from livestock, poultry, aquaculture, row crops, specialty crops, and forestry. The Arkansas Agriculture Department exists to promote and protect our state's agriculture industry. Our producers work tirelessly to feed, clothe, and shelter those here at home and across the globe. We take our obligations to them and our state's largest industry very seriously.
When was the last time you felt free? It's time to uncover that feeling again with the compassion of a cross and shield, accepted by over 90% of doctors and specialists, and the power of a card that opens doors in all 50 states, giving you the freedom to love, to dream, to dance like no one is watching. Arkansas Blue Cross and Blue Shield. Live fearless.
Authentic Arkansas means music, history, art, politics, food, culture, nature, all waiting for you to enjoy. Travel our state. See what makes us special. We can't wait to show you. Visit us and learn more at arkansasheritage.com.
Welcome back to the program. I'm Roby Brock, joined by Governor Asa Hutchinson. Governor, let's turn our attention to highways. Let's talk about that. You spoke to the Good Roads Council this past week through your support behind a renewal of a half-cent sales tax next decade, I think, when it comes up. A lot of folks say that's just not going to be enough for what our current highway needs are. Is there another plan in the works?
Well, we're still working on that, but let me talk about the extension of the half-cent sales tax. It expires in 2023, I believe it is. And so that's something that the Arkansas folks have devoted to highways. They understand what it does. And the benefit of making that a longer-term program is, rather than being a bond program, it can be a pay-as-you-go. We can go back to a pay-as-you-go system. And so I like that approach. If you voted on it in 2020, that's right around the corner. Yes, you would need to have some interim money that would go to it. We're providing $50 million a year right now out of general revenues over to the Highway Department. So there's some other things you have to look at.
You have to couple that with some federal funds too, don't you?
Sure, it's $50 million. You combine with the federal funds, it brings in a total of $200 million a year. And so we're doing a lot there, but there's a recognition by everyone that there are greater needs in terms of maintenance. But I envision a state in which we actually are making the improvements on Highway 412 across the north, I-49 and I-69. Takes a long time to get there, but we have to continue that march. Down the South Arkansas, whenever you look at Texarkana to Lake Village, whenever we can pull ourselves together, then we're going to boost ourselves economically. I want our state to grow, and the infrastructure is a critical part of that, highways and bridges. So part of that has to go to maintenance, part of it has to go to new construction, and that's my criteria to get the right amount there for the amount of highway funding that we need. We're still working on it. I'm going to be meeting with the legislators, listening to them, get their ideas. Some of them have different approaches on it, but we got to come together because in my judgment, it is one of the most important things we can do for the future of this state.
I've heard from some of those different judgments that they have out there. Is there anything that you could anchor yourself into right now that you think that this is something that's been suggested that I think is a good idea and warrants more study?
Well, I think I've articulated, the extension of the half-cent sales tax is foundational to it.
But beyond that?
Well, beyond that, you're looking at, what can you raise the gas or diesel tax any? What does that do to the people of Arkansas whenever they're having to pay those gas taxes? How does that compare with the other states? That's what we're looking at. There's those in the legislatures that have different approaches to it, but those are a couple of things that I think are concrete that we need to look at.
What about those that want to move some of the items that are money's going to general revenue right now, but they are transportation related? Is that Is that a viable option for you? You willing to look at that if there's enough economic health in the budget that would allow that to happen over a gradual period of time?
Well, I mean, you're talking about the sales tax on new and used cars, perhaps, tires and batteries,
right.
all of those highway-related items, so it makes some sense. But that's a $300 million chunk out of the general revenue budget. You think about we're devoting $111 million over 2 years to tax cuts. Triple that, to take away, to put toward highways. What is that going to do to education, the teacher pay, tax cuts?
Don't cut those taxes and keep it in there and let it gradually happen for roads over the next 3 years.
Well, that would actually not even, it would only be a down payment on what's needed. So I'll listen to them. I think the challenge for that idea is that, one, it doesn't fit within the budget. Secondly, I don't believe you can get the support of the legislature for that. So I don't see that as a viable option.
Still need the art of the possible there. Do you think that if a highway plan does come out of this legislative session beyond your support of the extension of the half-cent sales tax, whatever might cobble together, does it have to be a vote of the people, or are you willing to let the legislature pass a highway plan, you sign it into law?
Well, I've said that this ought to be referred to a vote of the people because historically they have supported highway projects. Whenever you're looking at a tax, their vote is important in my judgment. And so that's been my view. If somebody can show me a better way, we'll take a look at it. But I don't think that you will again have a consensus that you can do it without a vote of the people.
Well, you were reelected with 65%. Some people might say that they put their trust in you to, if you think that's the best public policy, sign off on it.
Well, and they elected me with 65% of the vote, and I articulated it ought to be referred to the vote of Arkansas. They sort of like that idea.
Fair game. All right, fair enough on that one. All right, let's talk about Arkansas Works. Just this past week, we've also learned another 3,800 and some change have been moved out of the recipients of Arkansas Works. Is this policy achieving its goal?
You know, at this point, yes. Whenever you look at the requirement for work, if you're able-bodied, receiving a public benefit, we've had, I believe, 3,800 people because of that notice and that work requirement move from non-work into employment and up the economic ladder. That's a success story. Now, they talk about those that are not in compliance, but again, I've talked to hospitals, I've talked to medical care providers out there, and we're not seeing a jump in uncompensated care. And so that tells me that these numbers that are going off are numbers that have moved out. We're raising the income level in Arkansas, so all of a sudden they're making more money. They no longer qualify for Arkansas Works. And without this kind of process of putting the work requirement, sending out the notice, we'd continue to be paying those insurance premiums every month for people who are no longer eligible for it. That's not the kind of system we want. So it is achieving that objective of cleaning out the system, encouraging people to work.
I have looked down into the numbers there and asked for some questions basically about where some of these people that can't be found. There's a lack of information for, I think, 28% of those folks that are moving off the rolls. Another 5% can't be located. So that's about a third of what's moving off the rolls. Does that trouble you that we don't even know where they are in the system? I mean, that it seems like if you're going to make this a data-driven decision for policy, you need to know where that third is going.
Well, if it's a third that moved and didn't tell you, that's not a government data problem. That is reflective of this population that is here today and in Missouri tomorrow in some instances. And so there is a strata of people that have that mobile lifestyle, and they also don't send in their address as to where they're changing or where they're moving to. So there's a lot. You're absolutely right. I want more information on those, but what the information we have now that we can measure is that we're moving more people to work, and we're cleaning up a system that had people who really were no longer eligible for the Arkansas Works population.
Do you think there's some people on there, maybe what if you want to call it ghost rolls? I mean, there were some people that just mysteriously appeared on there somehow through the way the system was originally set up? Or
Well, I think they're real people, but they also are people that move. But for example, here again, if you've got an individual that has got a job and their spouse has a job, and they get a notice that, well, there's a work requirement, and they say, well, we no longer eligible, so let's don't even bother answering because we're not eligible anymore. So that doesn't mean that the system's not working. It means the system worked because we're eliminating people who no longer qualify for this public benefit. And you know, if there's people that I worry about those that out of neglect they don't send it in, or maybe even intentional, they just don't want to bother with it. They wind up in the hospital down there. I do worry about that population. It is their responsibility to do it, but you don't want to enhance that uncompensated care. But here again, we have not yet seen that, and they will eventually get in, and January they're going to be eligible to re-enlist in the program. They have to exercise that responsibility to do it, but if they go to a health care provider, they'll help them to re-enroll. So we're working the system the best we can, but I believe it is very, very important in terms of the taxpayers' dollars, in terms of our work ethic, in terms of responsibility that we continue to implement it.
do you anticipate any changes to the Arkansas Works program in this coming session that would go beyond where it is sitting right now in terms of status quo?
I do not.
Okay.
I think it's fixed.
All right, he is Governor Asa Hutchinson. As always, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have fun out there duck hunting. All right, we appreciate it. We're back with more right after this.
Each day, the promise of our nation begins again. Arkansas and America, moving forward. I help make that promise a reality. It's not for everyone, but people everywhere depend on us.
Oh, I love you too, sweetie.
Trucking delivers, or everything stops. And that's what drives me.
I did.
Circuits deliver power by making connections. At Entergy, we believe that works for people, too. The next generation is our connection to the future. So every year, Entergy invests millions of dollars in education to teach skills for better jobs, to build a brighter path. To us, making connections means more than electricity. It means fulfilling promise. And together, we power life. Entergy.
When was the last time you felt free? It's time to uncover that feeling again with the compassion of a cross and shield, accepted by over 90% of doctors and specialists, and the power of a card that opens doors in all 50 states, giving you the freedom to love, to dream, to dance like no one is watching. Arkansas Blue Cross and Blue Shield. Live fearless.
And before we leave, we need to catch you up on a variety of business headlines. It was a heavy-duty week for earnings. Let's go inside the numbers for a closer look. Inside the Numbers is brought to you by the Arkansas State Chamber of Commerce and the Associated Industries of Arkansas. Bentonville-based Walmart reported a solid third quarter of financial results on Thursday. On total revenue of almost $125 billion, the retail giant posted quarterly net income of $1.7 billion. The highly watched metric of comp store sales in the U.S. rose 3.4%, while e-commerce sales for Walmart rose 43%. Tyson Foods posted another record year in fiscal 2018, which ended September 30th, with revenue of $40 billion, up 4.6% from a year ago. Net income totaled $3 billion compared to $1.8 billion in the year-ago period. Shares in Dillard's fell more than 18% in trading on Thursday as the Little Rock upscale retailer's third quarter results fell short of Wall Street expectations, sliding nearly 50% below year-ago results, with the holidays just ahead. For the reporting period ended November 3rd, Dillard's posted net income of $7.4 million, down 49%. And Arkansas's economic fortunes blossomed in the second quarter as the state's gross domestic product, GDP, accelerated to 4.4%, the 10th highest growth rate in the nation. And you can keep up with headlines like these each and every day at talkbusiness.net. That's all for this week's program. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Roby Brock. We'll see you next time.